in front of you today talking about financial empowerment programming, about financial inclusion programming. So just to remind you of who I am and how I fit into the context of this, Tamara Lindsay, who you met 2 panels ago, is our director of programs, and she's my boss. And Commissioner Menon, who is here earlier this morning, she's my boss's boss's boss. So we have all of these different programs that we're working on at the Office of Financial Empowerment, but the Financial Empowerment Centers are our biggest public-facing program here in New York, and we know that a lot of you are interested in our one-on-one counseling work, and it's come up a few times today, so we're happy to have the opportunity today to talk through what our program is, what it looks like, and then I also have 3 program managers here and a financial counselor from the programs to talk through some of the more detailed aspects of the work. So we're going to do that for the first hour. Then we're going to take a break, and for those of you who are really interested in what we do, we'll have some more counseling staff here and some more detailed information that's optional for you to stay to ask additional questions about our financial counseling work from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. If you stay for that panel, I should note that you will not miss the reception because the reception starts at 6. So you're welcome to stay to learn more from 5 to 6. But I'll go ahead and get started after I sip some water. Okay. I was worried I was going to have the same problem everyone else did, getting these to advance. So, what is a Financial Empowerment Center? A Financial Empowerment Center offers free one-on-one financial counseling to New Yorkers, and we're also expanding nationally, as you've heard today. I'll talk about that a little bit. It's individualized. It's tailored to the individual needs of the visitors who come to our centers. It's confidential, so sometimes people are worried that we might share their personal financial information with other government agencies, with other members of their household, but we really do keep their information confidential and secure. And then it's also provided by trained professional counselors, which we talked about today, different training programs that are available. Our counselors specifically participate in a consumer and personal finance course here at our local City University of New York, and that's a credit-bearing course that OFE helped to develop. So we ensure that they're professionally trained, and then the organizations that employ them also provide additional training. So we started out in 2008 as a pilot program. We've talked a lot today about not only providing financial education and then measuring whether or not recipients of financial education understand the information that we educate them on, but also really providing financial empowerment programming that leads to long-term behavior change. So the idea with one-on-one counseling is identifying the areas that lead to long-term behavior change, to long-term financial stability, figuring out how to move people, move the needle in those areas and move people individually to be more stable in those areas, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and figure out how we do that through one-on-one counseling. So all of that was the idea for our initial pilot program, right? How do we provide one-on-one financial counseling that leads to long-term behavior change in the financial empowerment areas that matter most? And then we tested and refined that model over the next few years, so from 2008 to 2012. And in 2012, we started offering the program as a city service funded by taxpayer dollars and offered citywide. And in the intervening years, I should also add that was a proven model that we developed and refined over time. And we also continue to receive private funding for some pilot and expansion programs. We've talked about the Ventanilla de Asesoría Financiera at the Mexican consulate. So if my pronunciation was off, hopefully it came through in your translators for you Spanish speakers. But yeah, we continue to receive private funding. It was initially started through private funding, but the bulk or all of the Financial Empowerment Center programming is through city funding. So we talked a lot today also about the role in government in ensuring sustainability and a high standard of financial counseling, but we also talked a lot about the need for trust in financial counseling as well, in these financial counseling services, financial inclusion services across the board. So we know that our local nonprofits here in New York have a really great relationship with the communities that they serve, that they're really trusted in those communities, and so because of that trusted relationship, we decided that it was best to contract this programming through nonprofit organizations. So our 5 nonprofit organizations are Bed-Stuy Restoration, who is represented today by Idesta Severin, the Financial Clinic, who's represented by Stefan Hench, Neighborhood Trust, Neighborhood Trust Financial Partners. I have your credit union logo up there, that confused me. Represented by Yuli Rodriguez and Sandra, help me with your last name? Chandubi. Gracias. And Phipps Neighborhoods and Urban Upbound. We have an Urban Upbound representative in the audience, but not on the panel, and Phipps Neighborhoods was not able to be here today. So those are our 5 nonprofit service providers that offer financial counseling citywide. We have 30 locations across the city. So 30 locations across the city. If you're not familiar with New York, we have 5 boroughs, and you can see each pen is where there's a center, and we have pretty even spread across all boroughs, pretty good representation. We have approximately 30 financial counselors in addition to that. So each of these centers is open at least 1 day a week, and at most 6 days a week. So our typical work week is 5, but because some sites find that it's better to also offer services on the weekend, some places are also open on Saturday or Sunday, and then they have 1 to 3 financial counselors each at each location. So what are these sites? All of our financial empowerment centers, for the most part, are co-located with other social services that offer anti-poverty program or some programming that generally serves low-income people. So we also heard a lot about this today, right? These different types of social services where we can integrate financial counseling, and we are doing that on the ground here. So the first on this slide is housing services. So we have 500,000 public housing residents in New York City. That's 1 in 9 New Yorkers live in public housing. So we have financial counselors on site at our public housing. We also have counselors co-located in homelessness prevention programs. A lot of neighborhood trust counselors are in programs that serve homeowners that might be facing foreclosure or have other issues as homeowners, and also affordable housing programs. I won't go through all of these because there are 30 sites and a lot of different programs, but just so that you get an idea of the types of programs with which we're able to integrate financial counseling. So we also have legal services, immigration services, and some of these overlap. Legal services for immigrants, employment services for immigrants. English as a second language programming for immigrants is also a common thing. Workforce development and employment programs, so for job seekers, and for people who are not quite ready to apply for a job, but job readiness programming. We also heard from Ishing today about some domestic violence survivor programs. We know that financial empowerment is really key in people who are victims of domestic violence to be able to leave their abuser. Also healthcare services and libraries. So we have a whole lot of different services where this has been proven successful. So that's where we're co-located, but then we also get referrals for very similar social service programs to those locations. So we have a lot of partnerships with city agencies, so we have the same types of services, homelessness prevention, public housing, affordable housing, job training programs, immigrant services. I also should have mentioned entrepreneurship. A lot of different agencies also refer participants in their programs to our financial empowerment centers that are also co-located with other services. So we have a lot of different partnerships through a lot of different areas. Our third biggest referral source, I always like to say, is friends and family. So people really, when they see the benefit of the service, they share the word in the community to the people who they care about the most, and then those people also come in. So that's a really gives high accolades for our service. And then we also have some advertisement and more standard outreach. So what are the services that we offer? What are those pathways to financial empowerment? We've also talked about that a lot today as well. So one of the main areas is access to safe and affordable financial products or bank accounts. The second area is building savings, not only for an emergency savings fund, but also to help people reach their long-term financial goals. So education savings, savings to make a down payment on a house for home ownership. Reducing debt, this might be less of an issue in some of your countries, but we can talk about how this model has been adapted. But unfortunately, we all know that Americans are saddled with a lot of debt that they can't pay. Tamara talked earlier about the savings rate being really low, and in some recent years we've even had a negative savings rate, so people are spending more money than they bring in. So debt is a really key area for us in helping people reduce debt. And then the last area is access to credit, using credit wisely. Being able to access credit when you want to go back to school and take out a loan and you want it to be a reasonable loan. You want to purchase a home and you want it to be, you want it to be a loan on favorable terms for you. It's really important that in our system that people have really high credit ratings. And then foundational to all of this, I wish after seeing Shamara's presentation that I put budgeting and money management as foundational and use the house model. So the foundation is budgeting and money management, and then these pillars are access to safe financial services, debt reduction, building savings, and access to credit. And then the top being financial empowerment, of course. So how exactly is it that we go about walking people through the financial counseling session and through these different topics that we can work on them with? So the very first thing we do is that we schedule an appointment. It's for an hour. And in that first financial counseling appointment, we go through their comprehensive financial picture. So we want to get an idea of what their financial situation is, right? So what's your current income? Are you employed? What are your expenses? Do you have any money left over? Is your income greater than your expenses? Unfortunately, in most cases, people are working with really, really tight budgets. So they're just barely making ends meet, or, as we know, very often living beyond what they're able to afford with their income. We want to know about their savings level. Do you have any savings? What are you using it for? What are your plans? What's your current debt level? Do you know your credit score? So just getting an overall picture of their financial situation. We also ask them about their financial worry. Do you feel like you're short on cash before payday? How likely is it that you'd be able to cover an unexpected expense of $500? That kind of thing. So through all of that, which can take 20 to 30 minutes, right? We get our counselors get an overall picture of where the individual is at, and then talk through what their financial goals are based on that picture. So generally someone comes in with a reason, right? No one just wakes up and thinks, oh, I have nothing better to do, I guess I'll go to a financial counselor today, right? They come in for a reason. So, very often they're referred through these very specific integrations where we found a link to financial counseling, and they know why they're coming in. But we also want to get this overall picture to help figure out how to address their issue. So we create an ongoing plan to help people reach their financial goals. So essentially, we divide our work up into these 4 areas that I've already talked about, and we help people along the path in each of them. And in our situation, as I mentioned, debt is a really common thing that people want to work on. So we see that over 80% of our clients want to work on credit and on debt, which are very closely linked. Over half, about 60%, want to work on increasing savings, and then the least common plan is access to banking and opening a safe and affordable bank account. It's only about 20% of our clients that are unbanked. It might be a little bit higher based on the Findex data in the populations that you work with, but again, this is a model that can be adapted. For example, for our program at the Mexican consulate, we see very low levels of debt, but very high levels of people being unbanked. So we can take the same model and apply it to a different population, or a population with a very specific picture. We can work on debt when people have it, but the main focus there is going to be access to banking, and then potentially building credit later on. We have a lot of interest in entrepreneurship there and different things. And we also, in that case, added an additional service plan, which is taxes. So this is a population, because they're new immigrants, haven't been exposed to our tax system as frequently, or aren't as familiar with it, so they need additional support and information about their taxes. So we added that as a foundational aspect of financial empowerment services for that population. So what are the steps that we do to help people in these different areas? If you are one of the people who decides to stay later, we'll go into this in much more detail, and there are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of steps, but I've highlighted just a few of them in the interest of time. So if someone comes and says, I want to open a bank account, or when you're going through what we call their financial health assessment, that overall holistic picture of their finances, and we see that they don't have a bank account, or they have a bank account where they're being charged a lot of fees, or we see that they're spending a lot of money on fringe financial services, we start by discussing what their current financial services use is. So what are you doing now? We want to get a baseline. And then we work with them to research specific account options, right? So this is an area where we know it's really important not to offer general information about what you should look for in a bank account, what banking is, but okay, where do you live? What's the closest bank to you? Do they have an account that meets what you need? Will you have direct deposit from your employer? What is the minimum balance amount that you'll use? How will you use this bank account? What are your goals for it? All of that kind of stuff. So we really want to have those really individualized, really specific conversations so that we can make sure that we're connecting people to the right products. And then we go in similar detail in the other plans. So savings, very often, as I mentioned, people are working on really tight budgets, right? So it's not that they have a lot of excess income and they just don't know what to do with it. We're really working to figure out how we can create a savings plan for them in a really tight budget. So the thing that we do most often first is ask them to track their expenses. So let's see how we can, even though you have very limited income, how you can reduce your expenses, so maybe you can build some savings into there. We have a line that's used very often in financial empowerment work called pay yourself first, right? So when you get your paycheck, pay yourself first before you pay your cable bill, your cell phone bill, your rent, well, all that kind of stuff. Well, if you're able to, of course, we want people to always pay their rent, but you know, think of yourself as well. Okay, and so that's how we start with savings and build that savings plan into the budget very often. But again, this is based on the individual circumstances. With debt, we create a debt management plan. We look at all their debtors, what the interest rate are, what all the legal status of all the debt is, all that kind of stuff, and create a plan. Credit, we review their credit report. We also do this with debt, connect them to credit building products, remove errors from the report. So our financial counselors really have a wide breadth of knowledge. I also meant to mention earlier, and I forgot about what the client profile is. So, you know, we get, I mentioned that we get referrals from social service agencies that traditionally serve low-income New Yorkers, but I wanted to say before I move on to the outcome and the impact of this work, I think it's really important to understand where people are. So our average income for our clients is $15,600 approximately. That's about a third of what the median income is in New York. About 40% of our clients are below the poverty line. Most are African American or Latino. So just to give you an idea, most are women. Of what we're working with in terms of client base. So by doing all of this very in-depth, detailed work with our clients, we've seen really amazing outcomes, and that's why everyone was talking about this. So not only do we want to know what the areas are that are the foundations of financial stability, but we also want to know what measurements we should be using, and we spent some time refining this, what measurements we should use and do use in order to assess whether or not we're actually moving people along in these different service plans. So last year, 2013, we served 5,700 plus clients total. And of those clients, we saw over 15,000, 5,700 clients and 1,500, close to 1,600 outcomes. Now, clients can achieve more than one outcome, especially if they're working on credit and debt in tandem. We often see that as they reduce their debt, remove errors from their credit report, their debt goes down, their credit goes up, that kind of thing. But we saw outcomes most commonly in the categories that people come in to work on. So this is really helpful to know. So of these 1,600 almost outcomes, over 600 of them were debt decreases. So I can just quickly name what we use as our outcome measurements. And again, these are measurements of longer term behavior change. So not just, did you think about opening a banking account? Did you look at different options? Did you actually open that bank account? Is it actually open 6 months later? Are you using it? For credit, it's for those without a credit score, they established a score. If they already have a score but it's not good, it's increased by 35 points. So that's the level that we've set that shows a substantive change in credit. For debt, it's decreased debt by at least 10%, so that shows that they're really moving to remove errors from their report, to negotiate with creditors, or to pay down debt as the general ways that people reduce their debt. Increasing total savings, so we want people to establish a regular savings habit as one option. We know that that's building that habit is really foundational in having people change their behavior around savings. So one of our outcomes is to maintain a regular savings habit for 3 months. And the second, potentially longer term though, if it's a windfall savings, it might be different, but increase their total savings by at least 2% of their total income. So increase total savings by at least 2% of income. And for our, based on the income of our clients, it's about $300. So yeah, last year of the nearly 1,600 outcomes we got, 600 people reduced their debt by at least 10%. We got nearly 200 people to open bank accounts. Credit, 370 improved their credit score by at least 35 points. And over 100 established and maintained a regular savings habit. 174 increased their savings by at least 2% of income. So especially given the situation that people are in when they come in, definitely because of some sort of financial stress or major financial issue that they're having, we really think that this is a great indicator of the work and really shows substantive change in these clients who are able to achieve outcomes. So looking bigger picture, since we started in 2008, we served over 26,000 clients. We've helped clients to save over $2.6 million total, and we've helped clients to reduce more than $17 million in debt. And then next, I was going to show some client success stories, so you would not only be hearing it from me and from the team, but the audio isn't working, so I hope these are all on our website. You can watch them yourself, but I also hope that there's a way to share this PowerPoint with you guys, and the links are embedded, so you can click and learn about these specific clients and their successes, and maybe the counselors can also make sure they're retelling some of the client success stories that they've seen. And that's it for the overview of the Financial Empowerment Centers. Thank you. So now I'm going to join this conversation down here, and I'm going to start to ask our counseling staff some questions about their work to make it more conversational, and then I'll invite you all to ask questions. I assume that you have many, since many of you are interested in providing similar services. So the first question is, how do you get client buy-in, and how do clients respond to the financial counseling services that you offer? And we can start with Stefan and then go down.
Sure. Hello everybody, I'm Stefan Hench. I am the Assistant Director of Services at the Financial Clinic. That is an organization that partners with OFE to provide or to run the Financial Empowerment Centers in, we have most of our centers are in Queens, but we have one in downtown Brooklyn. And before I became the assistant director of services at the clinic, I worked as a coach or counselor in the Financial Empowerment Center project for 3 years. What are some strategies that we use to get customer buy-in? I would say I would highlight 2 strategies that we use at the clinic. The first is at many of our sites, we have strategic partnerships with our on-the-ground partner organizations. Specifically, we provide coaching services 3 days a week at Make the Road New York in Jackson Heights, Queens. That is an organization that provides many services to recent immigrants to the United States and families of recent immigrants to the United States. And we also provide services 1 day per week at the Family Justice Centers in Brooklyn and in Queens. And the Family Justice Centers provide a whole range of services to domestic violence survivors. And in our partnerships with these targeted sites, we not only make our coaching services available, but we keep very, very close contact with the staff of these partner organizations, even going so far as to make them aware of some of the services that we provide. So we might, at the Family Justice Center in Brooklyn, where I was formerly a coach, I would frequently get customers or clients to come into my office with a copy of their credit report. And that was because they had met with a case manager at the Family Justice Center, and the case manager had identified financial abuse or identity theft as a potential issue, helped the client pull the credit report, and then the client was able to come to me already a few steps into the process to get my opinion on the credit report and remedy any identity theft or help the client build or improve his or her credit score. The second strategy that I'd like to emphasize is our goal-oriented coaching approach. For every customer we work with, we help each customer identify or work on an asset-oriented, forward-thinking, and passionately held financial goal. And I'd really like to highlight the asset-oriented feature of the goal, meaning that if somebody comes in saying, you know, this debt is really, really stressing me out, or man, I can't get an apartment, I need to improve my credit, we would help them to reframe that goal or even change the goal so it's phrased in a positive manner, or rather than a customer coming in focusing on the debt, we could say something like, well, we'll certainly assist you with that issue, but what are some of the positive things that you'd like to bring into your life through financial coaching?
Great.
Hi. Hello, my name is Idesta Severin, and I'm the program manager for the Financial Empowerment Center at Bedford Service and Restoration Corporation. And just like Mr. Hench, myself, I sort of was a financial coach 2 years ago, and then I sort of became the leader-in-chief and has been sort of doing this work for quite some time. And so my approach is similar to Mr. Hench in terms of thinking about reframing a goal. I also have a sort of a slightly different way of approaching, and so does my team. And so, you know, the clients who will voluntarily come in, they're the best one. They sort of eat up all of what you present to them and working with them. But of course, the better stories are the clients who came in resistant and had a change of heart, right? So, just to be frank, I really, and our team really sell them on where it is that they're going. And how do you do that? And so we use sort of a two-pronged approach. The first approach is really to be direct with folks. So, so really explain, so if you're sort of mandated to participate in our services, why did that happen? There must be a specific reason that whoever mandated you to come identify that. And then there must be some question on any financial topic that you may have always sort of wanted to know about. And sort of getting directly to that specific question, and then sort of applauding people. It's sort of my sort of hand-in-glove approach. I'm direct, but then sort of praise a client with what are the good things about what they have done or something they may have accomplished or where it is that they want to go. And then so thinking about engaging them long term and getting their commitment. And the other part of selling, I would say, is for us really understanding why is that particular person resistant. So thinking about the compassion side of it. So in our context, people may be resistant because they may not, they may experience sort of bad things in the past and sort of a bureaucratic, what do you call it? Bureaucratic system was sort of just pushing them around. And so, our approach is really to say, look, this is a one-stop. We're not here to push you around. Here's exactly what it is that we want to offer you and to, those folks who may be your family and friends, but really giving a commitment to be different than other bureaucratic organizations. So I would say that, our approach for clients is to sell them on the benefits, to be direct with them, and to also think about and address why is it that they've been resistant. So that's it.
My name is Julie Rodriguez and I work for Neighborhood Trust. In a dual capacity, I am a financial advisor with the Office of Financial Empowerment, but I also manage a program with NYCHA residents. As Tara mentioned, they're the residents who live in public housing. Before working with Neighborhood Trust, I also work with domestic violence survivors. And sort of putting all of these things together, the approaches that I bring to the table are really transparency with our clients. As all of the colleagues have mentioned, we have people coming for different reasons. Some are mandated to be there, either because they're getting an additional assistance, they're getting a grant for citizenship, etc., and that's their main concern. The last thing on their mind is financial advising or financial counseling. And other clients are overwhelmed with what's going on with their credit and the amount of debt, which, as we mentioned, is extremely high here in New York. So the important thing is meeting the client where they're at. If they're coming in for one particular reason, we make sure that we assess that, we answer that question, and we kind of move that behind. By allowing that, we start to build trust with the client. And the second thing that we like to emphasize is empowerment. The majority of our clients at this point have tried to be financially independent and financially stable, and some may have succeeded in some areas, but some need additional help, and they feel a little lost and they lose that sense of empowerment. We like to bring that back in the first session. By doing that, we are able to work in the other things that Tara mentioned, the budgeting, the credit repair, making sure that we help them in additional goals like home ownership, starting their business, student loans, etc. And those things cannot happen in 1 hour session. So if we do not build that relationship in the beginning, there is no way we're going to be able to work with them long term. So I think those are the two things that I want to highlight in how we incorporate that buy-in with our clients.
Hello, my name is Sandra Chanduvi. I work at Neighborhood Trust. I am Director of Programs. So just to add to what my colleague Julie just said, we also feel that it's really important to incorporate our services into the regular operations of our partners. So we believe that having a successful partnership is actually a key element for our success. As much as possible, we try to maintain open channels of communications with them so that we can see if there are problems with referrals referrals to our financial advisors, and we can address those problems to the point that right now on our team we have a director of strategic partnerships who is in charge of actually ongoing monitoring our sites. We have been able to work around different organizations since the start of our relationship with the Financial Empowerment Centers back in 2009. We started with 4 locations. We learned a lot from it. Scheduling, for example, was a problem at some point. Some partners were really rigid on scheduling clients only in the mornings or not seeing clients in the evenings, and with time we were able to convince that being a little flexible with the schedule is also beneficial for all of us, because some people work and it's difficult for them to attend a session in the morning or in the afternoon, so having the availability of going there at 6 or 7 p.m. is actually really good for them.
Thank you all. We actually only have 15 more minutes left of translation service, so I want to make sure that that you all get to ask questions. I have questions prepared that I think would be good to get them to talk about talking points I think are important, but I want to go ahead and open it up since we don't have that much more time with translation service.
Well, thank you very much. Listening to you, one of my conclusions is that the silver bullet is to have a team of good, passionate, compassionate, and effective team of coaches. So I'm wondering, how do you do to prepare this team? Sometimes you have exceptional people there, but I guess that you have to form them. So how do you do that?
Great. I think that each of these organizations has done a really good job of not only recruiting staff, but training staff very well, and as everyone has mentioned, has also seen advancement within the organization, which really indicates a strong team and really committed, cohesive group of people who work together on these issues. So I'll just open it up and let you guys respond.
Sure. I could say just a few things about that. As far as recruiting is concerned, the counselors that we hire, the coaches, they have 1 to 2 years of work experience after they get their bachelor's degree in college. And we look for people who are interested in nonprofit or public service work, who have some kind of financial background, so economics or finance or some related field. And once they join the financial clinic, we have our internal kind of content training. The ones who work on the Financial Empowerment Center project do take the City University of New York class. But then I would say that that only takes you so far. There's only so much you can learn about this work in the classroom. So we make reflection about difficult situations or difficult cases, or sharing of success stories, certainly part of our supervision and connection with the coaches themselves. I had, before I became assistant director at the financial clinic, I had been doing coaching work for 3 years, and even after 3 years, I had new cases that I had never seen before.
Absolutely.
So you never stop the training for this job.
Yeah.
And I think IDESTA has some really strong strategies for team building, if you want to talk about those or respond to another part of the question as well.
Sure, this is a great question because we just hired 2 new financial coaches. So I really believe in a team approach to finding folks. So it's not only my judgment, as to whether or not we hire. So our director is involved, and what I also do is to involve the team in terms of a conversation about what they think about the potential candidate, because obviously, my intent is to build a team, not just to hire an individual, but what different skills could that new person bring to the table. So recently, when we hired two new individuals, there was no one on our team who really intrinsically understood taxes, completely. So we looked for that. We looked for whether or not the person was, as Stefan said, passionate about this work in nonprofit, or are they just looking for a job? So we try to sort of filter out those things and look for someone who can, number one, add value, and number two, someone who will really commit, because this type of work is not just sort of you get up, you come to work 9 to 5, you get paid, and you go home. It's really about a commitment. And that's one of the other things that I would say that I look for in terms of talking with an individual. And where have they been committed to something in the past? Or maybe they haven't, right? But I really look for commitment at a level of integrity, because when you're dealing with clients, you want to be that difference maker, and you have to have someone who can sit in the chair long enough to make a difference with that person. So those are some of the softer skills that I look for. Yeah.
Although I don't do the personal hiring, as participating in the training process, Tara mentioned OFE does send us to an intensive rigorous training on all of the ins and outs of credit and financing, but not the soft skills as much. I think that's something that each organization brings on their own, and one of the things that Neighborhood Trust has done is really including the theory of behavioral economics. So it's not just about the finances, it's about all of the barriers and all of the things and all of the challenges and successes around the individual. So really understanding that, being sensitive to their culture, to where they're coming from, and also bringing our own personal vulnerable perspective into the matter is really important. New York is a city of immigrants, and I think most of us have lived similar situations that our clients have. So I think maintaining that professional relationship, but also bringing the human element is extremely important to that.
And to add to that, supervision is also very important for us, so we try to maintain always a close relationship with our financial advisors. Sometimes we don't see them in a week or two, so we're trying to bring the team together on a bi-weekly basis at least, so that we can share best practices or we can give them more training. We also try to promote from within. So I was a financial advisor 8 years ago, and right now I'm director of programs, and some of the associate director of programs that we have, they used to be financial advisors as well. And the other thing that we also try to do is to empower them to manage their side, so they feel that they have control of it. They can improvise some ideas, or they can share with the team some things that they work and they want to implement.
Next question? Oh.
Hello, Glynis Long from Young America's Business Trust. First, I want to just compliment all of you on the dedication that I can sense and feel about what you're doing and how you're doing it. You're just absolutely remarkable, and it's very good to hear this. I have a question that's more on the 30,000-foot level. If you don't mind, maybe the moderator could handle this. How did you end up with 30 centers in New York? It's fantastic. That's the one question. And the other question is the natural follow-up. Are you planning on replicating in other cities or even other countries?
Yes. Well, I meant to mention this earlier when I was talking about the model slide. So we're now have national replication in a dozen other cities across the country. So that's really great. I could start to name them, but then I'd probably stop at some point, but I can tell you some of them. So it's Denver, Nashville, San Antonio, Philadelphia, Lansing, Michigan, Hawaii, and many others. I'll just stop there before I, and yeah. And then, we really do hope that this is the beginning of an international replication conversation. I put so much emphasis on the fact that this model is adaptable and replicatable and scalable, because we really do hope that this is something that everyone here will be able to take home and start similar programming. And then in terms of our expansion in New York City, I came onto this project after we already had the public contracts to be operating citywide, but I really think it was starting with our pilot programs, getting private funding for that, having financial institution foundations and other private funders who really believed in this work and saw it as valuable, to offering services, to proving our model, to proving it to city government, and then finding these 5 nonprofit organizations who are skilled and able to offer the services, and they really identified the sites that they thought would be best for offering the programming. We did have a process, an RFP process, where our agency reviewed applications and reviewed the sites that these organizations proposed to be at, but we really worked together to identify the locations where the program will work the best, and to sort of balance having staff coverage there, but also ensuring that we have coverage all over the city. So Neighborhood Trust, for example, more so than the other sites, has more counselors at more sites for fewer days, right? So that's one approach we've kind of tried. So is it useful to have someone at a site 1 day per week, and how much more useful is it to have 1 day per week versus 5 days a week? So I also just want to emphasize, when it's 30 sites citywide, it's not all full-time.
I also, this is Jonathan, and I just want to take real quickly the host's privilege on this question, because I think it's a key question for everybody. As was mentioned, these financial empowerment centers are now publicly funded across New York. There are dozens of them. They are being replicated through the CFE fund in a dozen cities so far across the country. And the basic question that I think is important to answer is this question of how did they become publicly funded? And I just want to underscore a couple of themes here that are really important. The first really brings us back from the morning when we're talking about data. The reason that these programs ended up being funded in a budget year where New York had a $5 billion deficit was not because the mayor at that time was looking for new programs to fund. It was because the data of the accomplishments of these centers was making the case not just for how substantive and effective these programs were, but in our various supervitamin integrations that New York is still doing in other social service arenas, the savings that were being identified when this kind of high-quality, professional, university-trained, enthusiastic counseling was really helping to stabilize these large populations of people who were already presenting themselves for social services. So the short answer is that you need that infusion of private capital to get the ball rolling, but ultimately the sustainability comes from the data metrics of their success and what they can accomplish. So I just want to underscore that, because I know that that's a way to be thinking about how this might work in your country as well. Thank you.
Thanks. I think we had some questions up here.
One quick. My concern is for the vulnerable groups. For example, persons with disabilities, the youth, school dropout. How do they fit into your programs?
Sure. Do any of you want to talk about that? So you're talking about youth who are not working and are not in school, disconnected youth. Do you want to talk about some of those? Do you have any programs addressing that? Okay. So I'll just say that in general we find that our programming works best when there's a connection to income, or that someone's working on a workforce development program. So we do have a new program that we're trying to link this to, that we haven't started yet, through our Human Resources Administration, that works specifically with disconnected youth. We do generally work with older adults, older than 18, and generally find that there's limited amounts of what we're able to do. We definitely have the conversation around banking. We definitely have the conversation of, don't get a credit card and spend more money than you are able to. But in terms of client retention and working with youth long term, it's not a population that we've had a lot of success and experience with, but we are partnering in this new integration, so we can let you know the results as we start that new program.
Sorry, just a quick question. In terms of the goals planning and that component of the plan, is it part and parcel of a wider client intervention plan? And do you participate as counselors in the wider case conferencing with social services, for example? And what kind of slippage rates do you see for clients? What kind of caseloads do you have? What's the intensity of contacts? Those kinds of. If they're better addressed in the next segment, then I might have an incentive to stay.
Okay. Do you want to talk about your caseload and case conferencing? And do you mean specifically for financial counseling or for the other services that program recipients are?
I'm particularly interested in the wraparound model and beyond referrals and. Sorry. Particularly interested in the wraparound model and beyond referrals and counter referrals. What is the depth of your engagement in terms of working alongside social services to help families? Because financial counseling and these presenting issues might just be the tip of the iceberg. Obviously, there are so many other factors and dimensions driving family dynamics. So I was just kind of interested how you interface and interrelate with wider case management support.
In our organization, which you should stick around until the 5 o'clock session, because our director of program operations will be there, and he can give you a sort of a view that is sort of above what I'm looking at on a day-to-day basis. However, our team within our organization is embedded within a department that has educational, social services, services for veterans, as workforce development. So essentially what we're trying to do is integrate all of those things as you've pointed out. But I think he can really give you a meat in terms of that type of answer. Yeah.
And I think to add to that, on a day-to-day level, it's also a matter of maintaining confidentiality and transparency, like I mentioned before, so it really depends on the client. We want to empower them, so we want them to do the work so that they understand how this works, they feel they know what to do, but if they need that extra additional assistance, we make sure we have consent, written consent from the client, and we also cooperate among each other. We've referred clients to Desta and her team, and they've also referred clients to us. We've referred clients to other organizations to help them in terms of employment. As Tara mentioned, some of the OFE sites deal with clients that are about to lose their home. So we maintain a close communication with the pro bono lawyers that are assisting them in the foreclosure process. And we do participate to some extent in that conferencing and that teamwork, but it depends on whether the client wants it, because they're in the driver's seat and it's their money, it's their life, and we want to respect that.
I did want to answer your question about the caseload. So our financial coaches generally handle about 500 clients for the whole year. So that just to sort of give you an idea of what they're seeing.
I would just add that for our referral partners, we get some referrals from on-site organizations. As I mentioned earlier, we have some sites that are targeted towards specific populations. In our case, recent immigrants for one site and domestic violence survivors for other sites. In those cases, we find that our clients are very willing to give consent to share information with the referring organization. And we do have not a formalized system, but an informal system, since we're located in the same building, to check in with the case manager, say, who referred the client to us. So yes, in those situations we do keep very close contact with the referral organization.
slippage in terms of those clients who, right. At what point you decide to disengage? Sorry, I just wanted to ask a little bit in terms of the issue of slippage, in terms of clients who tend to revert back to perhaps their original situation, and how do you track that, if any, and how do you decide to disengage with a particular client? Do you disengage too early, or those kinds of, I guess, more qualitative kind of issues?
I think I would just say quickly that I think it is pretty common that we see you know, improvements and then setbacks, and improvements and then setbacks. You know, it's pretty typical. We like to think that with long-term engagement that it's a graph that looks kind of like this, right? It generally goes up, but of course unexpected expenses are going to come up, and you know, and it is something that we see commonly, and we do continue engaging with clients for the most part as long as they want to engage with us, so long as it's a useful thing, and I can let the counseling staff respond in more detail.
A lot of times, if you see in terms of just looking at pure data, if you see a client who sort of came in, you know, you're working with them, and they've sort of zeroed out their debts, and their credit scores are through the roof, and then they come back and now they have, you know, additional debt. It doesn't always mean that that particular client have, you know, gone in a opposite to what you've instructed them or coached them to do. It may mean that they've taken an opportunity. For example, they've gone and gotten a loan at the credit union, right, for educational purposes or some other purpose, but they're now understanding how to, you know, analyze, you know, interest rates and those type of things. So from the pure data standpoint, you just can't assume that, right? And for clients who have actually come in and they're in a worse off situation, in the first place, you listen, and then I think you have to forgive people, to be honest, right? And you just can't, you know, you may not just sort of go off on them unless you have that type of real relationship with them, but you want to keep a professional stance. But you have to forgive them and say, I'm willing to work, you know, with you again, but here are some things that I'm going to request of you.
And I think for us, there's really no cutoff point unless there's a specific mental health concern or a specific disability in which this it's not the right environment for them. Initially, clients, if they are the clients that are willing, able, ready to start working, you see them pretty regularly. And as Desta mentioned, once things are pretty much done, they kind of fall off the graph for a little bit. What we do is we tend to check in on them every 6 months or so. Hey, how are you doing? How's that bank account? It's been about 6 months. Why don't we check your credit report again? Let's make sure there's no mistakes on it. Your consumer rights are being kept. So we really don't close the relationship, but we also leave them time to, again, allow them to feel empowered and continue to do this on their own, because we won't be there forever.
Yeah. And at some point, I mean, there have been obviously clients who you would disengage, but that's very rare that you would disengage a particular client. My, you know, one rule is do not offend my staff, and that's it. We can work together.
And just one more thing, so follow-up is a very important component for us as well. So we are trying to incorporate new technology with that, maybe some text messages, maybe through email, because sometimes phone calls don't do the trick, maybe they're working and it's not the right time to talk. And we also pull their credit reports on a regular basis, so they give us the authorization to do that. So that is a good indicator for us when we want to approach and see, oh, now credit card debt is now, instead of 5,000, so that was 6 months ago, now it's 10,000. So that's the right point when we want to talk to them and actually say, hey, this is a good time for you to come back for a session.
Definitely.
Sure, I would just, you know, I certainly agree with all the sentiments of my colleagues, and I would just reemphasize that we really want to make our offices really a judgment-free zone. So, you know, not judging the the customer or client on anything that happens, unless, as Adesta said, there's something offensive to the staff. But otherwise, if a customer comes back after 3 months from the previous appointment and they say, I know we made all these plans, but something happened and I didn't go through with it, and then I just broke down and I fell off my spending plan and I'm right back to the place where I was, or even in a worse spot, then we'd want to say, great, thanks for coming back. Let's get started and let's talk about the next steps that we can take.
Okay. So that was our last question, and fortunately there's an opportunity to ask many more questions for the next hour if you're able and interested to stay. So we'll go ahead and take a break to dismiss the people who are not going to stay, and I would really like to thank our panelists for sharing their time and their experience, and we really appreciate it. So we don't have to clap again, but
thank you.
Thank you.